So as you all are looking through the what we heard section, is there any area that you feel is not clear, or one of the things that we talked about, for example, was we had very specific guidance in there for certain groups of students, and that is what can go into that detailed plan. Plus, those things can be included within our guidance, especially if they're aligned to a specific action. And that's the reason we took that specific language and put it into its own document. So anything that you feel needs to be edited at this point in the what you heard section, just this middle section.
I know a couple of the things we had on yesterday talked about the health and safety and SEL stuff in there. I'm assuming that it was removed because this was more, I guess, focused on curriculum.
Yeah, so the health and safety, so we had information that we said we heard priorities from families related to, like, they were really prioritizing the health and safety of their students. And so I left that in with the detailed notes. But as far as it being a, they were really looking for high level themes that are related to curriculum for guidance. SEL, we did have some things in there. Do you think that there's a place that we should include that, or maybe it goes in this top section where we're talking about curriculum format and tools and the content?
I would think something should go in there in regards to incorporating some kind of SEL or community building as a part of the curriculum, because I did hear that in a bunch of the answers that wanted teachers building that relationship with their students in terms of the instruction. So
okay. So so let's add a line in here in this first bullet then, if you think that's going to be a good, seems like the spot. So maybe we'll just do additionally. So would you say, you want to say something like the curriculum should include resources and time for community building and social emotional learning? Would that be a fair thing to say?
sounds good. Conversely, I think this is something teachers are going to want to do as well. So it'll validate both directional. It'll validate parents to students and students to teachers.
And I think, again, this is something that can translate to an action step when we get to that guidance. So definitely think of that as well. Are there any other comments about what we heard? So I know we had a couple people join lately. I just wanted to let you guys know again that the detailed notes are hyperlinked in here, and I've also added it as a document so that we have that to reference.
Julia.
Yes. Oh, sorry, Mickey, you're muted. That's okay.
How do we access those hyperlinks? Because when I'm going to the screen, I don't see any.
If you click on the blue language right here, then you'll need to click below it to open it. And it should, I made the link viewable for, I think, everybody, so that any community member in our group can also open this these notes. Did that work for you?
Yes, it's just coming up really
slow. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah,
it's Google Drive these days, right?
No.
So if we could take a couple of minutes really quick to take a look at the summary of the topic, and if we would like to elaborate on this or add to this at all, you know, the idea here basically is that we're just framing, like, what is this page about? You know, like I said, I pulled a little bit of language from our new strategic plan, but I would like to add anything that you feel would be helpful in this portion.
I'm kind of stuck on, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
The criteria for success, and that the expectations are developmentally appropriate across grade levels, which I agree, but maybe like adding also linguistically and culturally appropriate, or culturally responsive, or something, not only developmentally, but responsive to our linguistic and culturally diverse student body, right?
Yeah, we can adjust this however you want. So Mickey, are you in there? Do you want to type what you think? You threw a couple things out there, so I want to kind of capture.
I'm trying to figure out how to
Okay.
word it, so let
Okay.
me.
So that's the other piece. So if you guys want to look at this top section together, Christina told me that, you know, so with the criteria, we had very little criteria, and when I was reviewing it, I felt like it wasn't fully fleshed out, maybe, right? Like we hadn't really focused on that level yet. And so she just said to really kind of frame it in think of this as your hopes for supporting teachers, students, and families. And so we can remove some things, we can adjust some things, we can add to it. Again, we don't want to get 30 bullets in there, but we want it to be complete. Great. And I'm going to go ahead and resolve these things as we complete them. Any other thoughts for criteria for success or summary of topic?
Can we say, in addition to across grade levels, can we also say across instructional levels to capture?
So, and if I say and instructional levels?
Yeah,
Yep.
across, yeah.
Absolutely.
Hi, sorry, I was joining late. I had a work call.
No problem.
And I'm not sure if you guys went over this, but where you have the criteria for success saying focus on providing student access to grade.
I'm sorry, Laura, I can't hear you.
Can hear.
I heard
Me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Sorry. The grade level content makes me a little bit nervous just because, as we discussed, the materials that have come home a lot of times have been too basic for some of the students. And so I feel like that may be a limiting way to state that. I'd rather be able to put, you know, differentiation in there, getting the student access to the content that they need.
Okay, so focus on providing student access to grade level content and appropriate levels of challenge. With
Yes,
that?
yes, thank you.
You're welcome, yeah. Sorry, my screen is so small I can't see the letters that I'm typing. Okay. Oh. All right. Any other input for criteria for success, summary of topic? Okay. So we can come
I'm
back.
sorry, I'm focused on that same line now because
Okay.
I'm kind of thinking about the flip side of that point that was just made. Sorry, was that Laura? I can't see everybody. Because she was talking about how grade level content might be a little too basic for some students, whereas on the flip side of that, it's also way too challenging for some of our other students. And so I do think that term grade level, providing student access to grade level content is a bit limiting. And I'm not sure if the appropriate levels of challenge kind of captures the other extreme end of that spectrum.
Yeah, and I'll just say that language comes from a VDOE document, so we can certainly add to it. I think, you know, from the VDOE's perspective, when they put that document out, what they were trying to get at is they don't want people to feel like they need to go back and say, oh, you missed the last quarter. We're going to not do any grade level content before we cover everything that we think you didn't get last year, and then we'll start grade level content. So really it's about more giving kids what they need to be successful. So we can certainly add to that language.
I wonder if we want to include something about like filling in gaps or like, you know, addressing that head on. Because we not only do we have kids that missed out on instruction from the spring, but that would also incorporate kids with special education needs and stuff like that.
Yeah, so let's.
But like focus on grade level content with an eye towards, I don't know.
Can we just move, can we just take out grade level and just say content? Because
So
it makes me think that somewhere on here we need a criteria that also includes some kind of assessments to help determine what the students need. You know, some kind of formative or um, because otherwise we'd be using the grade level as the determining factor where everybody starts.
Yeah, so that we can certainly put something in there, an assessment as well. I'll just I'll give you the language exactly from the VDOE. They basically said rather than going back too far in the learning progression, track learning progress, diagnose, and go back just enough to provide access to grade level material. Oops. I lost my chat. So how would you like to adjust? Okay, see. So Carolyn's got something in the chat. Would you like, I'll copy it into the document and you guys can let me know if this meets the needs of the group. We're looking at this one here. Oops. This is what I just put in. How do you guys feel about that? We're replacing the third bullet.
The only thing I would agree with you, Julia, is somewhere making sure that the curriculum we're going to provide isn't going backwards. I think that, like you said, that's what the VDOE was trying to impress upon with their language. And many of the articles that we read also echoed that same sentiment about not going super far backwards and trying to provide as much access to grade level content. So I would like to advocate a little for having some of that language in there. I'm not opposed to what's in there, just something about that it does focus on access to, or there is opportunities for, maybe that's it, opportunities for grade level content, you know.
I'm looking at.
Yeah, Laura put something in the chat.
Yeah,
It looks good. I know it's hard. So many things to notice.
Yeah, it's some of it's just the font of this text is like 10-point font, and it makes it. I'm just gonna try and see if I can zoom in on the screen a little bit more. Okay.
Ah, that's good.
Better, right?
For my old eyes, anyway.
So we're saying add, and now I see what you, now that I can see the text on my screen, I can see exactly what you were intending to do with it. All right, so we have focus on providing student access to rigorous instructional program with appropriate levels of challenge and support informed by grade level content, although not limited to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, within the guidance and within some of the documents that we can attach for additional details, we can provide articles or literature that gets deeper into that, because I think it's hard to do so in a bulleted list. So I think if there are some really good, concise articles out there that get to the heart of how do we meet the diverse needs of our students while not perpetuating achievement gaps, you know, in equity issues, then that would be a great thing to hold or to include on the next page. Do we feel like this meets the needs of all of, I know we had a lot of input on it.
This might not be the right group or space to note it, but do we want to put something in about allowing or encouraging teachers to be working collaboratively and exchanging ideas, and something that's a little bit more specific to addressing the needs of a virtual?
So, and I wonder if actually that's a great segue into moving on to our steps, our guidance for school staff and central office, because I think that that's a pretty specific step that we would like to encourage for our staff. Would that, do you think that would meet our needs?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look on this next slide really quick. And it's not as pretty because I'll get into it a little bit later and make it look better. So one of the things that I did do is I took that I took the best practice data that we had already typed up, and we kind of felt like those did translate to actions, although I don't think that I necessarily have them in the right place, and we probably want to adjust some of the language. So I have to zoom out so I can look at my comments that I wanted to remind myself of yesterday. But a couple of things that Christina and I talked about yesterday, because this guidance is meant to be for both a hybrid model and a virtual model, I talked to her about that there might be different guidance in some cases needed for the different models. And she said one thing that we could do is potentially color code if there is something that's more of a guidance for hybrid or more for virtual. So that is something that we can consider as you're thinking about the guidance in buckets. If you feel like the guidance goes to all, then we won't color code it. I did put our essential questions in the notes at the very bottom. So the guidance is we're supposed to provide division guidance, school building action items, and they're supposed to relate directly to the essential questions that were assigned to us from the VDOE. Okay. And then I'll try and get us zoomed in a little bit more today. And I'm going to delete the things that we've already done. Make this go away. So if it's okay with you all, I'm going to make this bigger. So Kaylin, you mentioned something about staff collaborating. Can you unmute yourself? Thanks.
Sorry, yes, staff collaboration and exchange of materials or ideas.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's like there's a central place that you can then share things, or if it's just that we're saying that the teachers should be encouraged to divide their labor, but.
So maybe that comes up to some of the division guidance, and we can edit, like I said, some of this stuff down, and if it would help, I can, well, I'll keep typing because I can't see my highlighter, but that is something that we could add in as division guidance. Do we want to have we used to have the learning resource exchange where people could drop in links to share with division-wide, and it was open to all of our teachers, and that's something that we could definitely propose. And we did a little bit of work like that in the spring in some cases.
I think including that here would be very appropriate, Julia.
Okay. I think for collaborating.
I'm wondering if schools, and I don't work at all schools, so I don't know, but I'm wondering if schools had grade level PLCs continuing throughout the spring and what that looked like, and if that can be kind of improved upon or expanded upon here somehow.
Yeah, I don't know what every school did. I know that some schools certainly continued some of those processes. Rainey, maybe you could speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, our teams did, and I believe that most schools, they didn't meet 2 times a week like we would normally, but everybody met at least once a week as a team.
Okay.
So I think continuing with that as a division-wide guidance would be wise.
And I know that subgroups, at least in the special ed world, were also meeting. So schools had special ed meetings, citywide groups came together across schools.
And I know that there's a separate group working on professional learning. But just an encouragement, maybe not appropriate here, but a division-wide expectation is that professional learning really is focused on ensuring consistent adherence to the guidance here.
I'll go ahead and
I don't know if this is the right place too, but this might be a good opportunity to hone in the academic interventionist and instructional coaches, and maybe say something about how they can help support teachers and support the curriculum.
Yeah, so absolutely. Is there a specific spot or a statement that you want to put in? And then I also, I'll empower you all to feel free that you can type in this document as well. I don't want you to think that you have to wait for my approval to type in here.
I'm not sure, maybe Rainey can talk a little bit about how he used those the past 4 months, but I don't know if there was like a dedicated time, so that the coaches or the academic interventionists met with teachers certain times, or if there was office hours for them. I'm not sure, but maybe something so how they can be woven into the process.
Sure, I don't have any suggestion for verbiage right now, but if I can just talk out loud for a minute, there certainly was a line of demarcation between those two groups. I think as we move into 4.0, the specific expectation for the interventionists will be to provide more direct support either in a breakout room or with that in some kind of a tiered capacity, which I think we already addressed.
Has there been any discussion about utilizing coaches or interventionists across the division rather than within their assigned schools only?
No, Caitlin, I think there could be though. I know we're talking generally speaking in the HR team about how people might be repurposed. Are you thinking anything in particular?
Well, I was more thinking of, I guess, not specifically, but I just feel like there's a real opportunity, especially in a virtual environment, to have interventionists, even if they don't know the kids specifically, sitting in or helping out or working with special groups or even pairing them across schools to sort of maximize their specialized training and ability to help those kids who need the most help.
I would like to think some of that happened organically across schools. But I think that the purpose of this is to be a little more explicit in saying what the expectations would be.
Right, yeah, so we could certainly make that suggestion as they're considering the models. And so maybe we need to have a running list of additional feedback that we would like them to consider within the models. And then I was just gonna address, Laura, your email about how we can ensure that the collaboration is being done. So typically to ensure collaboration with in the school basis being done, we look to our school administrators for support with that. So that could then in turn become a specific action for school administrators. Something like that, and this could probably be adjusted language-wise. Yeah, thank you, whoever's in there hopping around and fixing my typing. Um, So as we're looking at this also, I think something else we could do is review that language that I copy and pasted. I took the language straight from our notes, so if we want to adjust or refine any of these action steps in the, or any of this division guidance here, that's something that we can also do. I think the more concise we are, the more easily it will be to, or the more easy it will be to implement these items. And one of the things I'll let this group know, and I think a couple of you have been in our early collaboration stages, but we've had some discussions about using our learning management system and using Canvas for our students in grades 2 through 12. And then kind of replicating how we worked with this summer for Clever Teacher Pages and Canvas in grades K1. So thinking that kindergarten and first grade teachers would minimally have a homepage that families could access to have that open line of communication. And then I believe, and Jane Richardson would have to weigh in, or unless I have any pre-K folks with us, which I don't know if I do, but they used Clever Teacher Pages this summer and seemed to really like it. So I went ahead and included that, and she can ultimately give that guidance.
Julie, I'm wondering if there might be a school building action item associated with school administrators supporting teachers and utilizing the Canvas blueprints or whatever it is we want to call that kind of work.
I'm going to go with the learning management system since we're going to have kind of this tiered approach to it, if that's okay. But yes, and Carolyn's mentioning we've been working on creating blueprints so that when staff is trained on it, they won't have to do the heavy lifting of starting from scratch. So we have some prototypes that we've worked on that will make it very easy to implement.
I'm going to attempt to talk. I don't know if my internet will stay.
I can hear you.
Okay, is there a way that we could, as a division, strive to do something like once a quarter, either targeted at elementary and then targeted at middle and then targeted at high school? That's something that all students have access to, so that like we have a guest speaker, and it's, you know, I think we're talking about maybe there's like a fifth day that the teachers are not teaching in either model, that's a work day for them. Mm-hmm. So like, can we have things that we're trying to achieve for all of the students? You know, we're not having field trips and that type of thing, but it could be a speaker, an epidemiologist speaking. It could be somebody talking about social justice issues, and have that speaker in advance, and then have teachers that are set up to then do like small group work with students. But so that we look at this opportunity sort of as a division, what do we want to expose our kids to that's something that all children should be learning about? I don't know. You'd have to build it in here for it to be done. So I don't know how other people feel about that, but.
And everybody else can weigh in and definitely talk. I'm trying to decide if that would be like a universal division-wide guidance, or if that would be a school-based. And I know that we did do a little bit of that with the science hour that they did on the ACPS TV. We had some science speakers, which were really cool, but maybe not widely viewed. And so I'm wondering if we framed it as something along the lines of provide innovative virtual events for students on a quarterly basis. And how are people feeling about that? I think that our partners would be willing to participate in some things like that. So if nobody's
that sounds
okay, so
yeah, sounds real
what did I
good.
say? Provide.
my thought is that this concept kind of falls under the community building SEL focus that I'm not sure that we've really captured here yet. Like this is a component of community building we're talking about. It's our whole ACPS community, right? So I'm wondering if we want to kind of flesh out that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think that that's going to fall under some division guidance, right? So we want to provide some division guidance for community, and I mean, certainly our student services team will have some very specific guidance around what they want to do for social emotional learning. But I think when we're thinking about curriculum, we're going to, no matter which model we're in, there will have to be time built in so that students can have the opportunity to be in community building and participate in social emotional learning opportunities. So is there some specific guidance that you have in your mind or language that you'd like to include?
Not sure.
Okay. So I'm going to put a little placeholder, knowing that we need to put some language in there, and you know, luckily this is the guidance and it's not the final draft today, right? It's not due in final form yet. So
I think the key is we want to make sure there's time and place built in to the curriculum for this specific need. Yeah. That we're not just, I understand, and I agree that a lot of that guidance will come out of a different team. But so for our purposes, it's about making the space for it and making sure that we are not just encouraging, but requiring that our teachers and schools address it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that will also have an effect on proposed sequence and pacings depending on the model as well. So there might be more time built into certain units in order to ensure that we're allowing that time, right?
I do see that we have the school-based interventionists in there. I'm not sure if we were grouping the coaches in that, but I don't know if we want to go back to having the school administration and how they'll utilize the coaches to support teachers with the curriculum.
Kim, does that capture it? Kind of. You guys can edit my language. It's just like
This may go under the staff will, but I think in both of these models, more so than when kids are actually physically in school, there's got to be time built in, and for the parent interaction with the teachers, that may be more of a demand than in a typical school year. So I think we need to build that in.
So I had something kind of similar to that, not quite your language, lumped into, I think this is a two-stepper, right? So provide a curriculum as engaging and authentic as possible. And then we're talking now about communication with families, which this kind of said, but I think we can flesh that out a little bit more. So
like more, I mean, I think there really potentially it's got to be more sort of parent conference time, right? You're going to want to check in before mid-November in either of these models. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not saying it's a full-blown conference, but it seems like we've got to have some kind of mechanism. We don't want to go 3 months in and then, you know, find out all of these things in the conference.
And was there a subgroup working specifically on feedback?
Yes, there was a feedback and assessment, and I think they had one more bucket in their group. But I think what I realized on Monday is that our group kind of bleeds into all of their groups too. So we're going to have to do a lot of connecting. I actually went and peeked in a couple of people's slides, and I was like, what did they type, just to see. So I think that if we have something that we feel goes in here, we can type it, and then if there's a conflict, we'll figure it out.
No, agreed.
There is, sorry, there's a community team as well, right? Because I know I've been sharing some feedback with Kurt along the lines, was that Laura that just mentioned about the conferencing with parents? I mean, I think we're going to have to get creative with the idea of like community schools and school sites being, I've also been in touch with IT, more support for parents with implementing curriculum and distance learning, more creative ways, even if it's designated school sites, where this can happen. If we start all distance learning, that has to be absolutely more than a quarter.
I do believe that that Kurt's team is heavily focusing on making sure that we're reaching all of our families and providing multiple modes of communication to them. So if you feel like it falls under this category, we can certainly include it, but I know that there is a team focused on that.
Yeah, I'm sure all these areas I think overlap in some ways.
Yeah.
Like you can't talk about curriculum without assessment curriculum without community involvement. Sorry.
I'm going to put connection to community involvement team, and then I can connect with Kurt later. And Rainey, were you going to say something about feedback?
No, just the distinction between the feedback to students is going to be different and feedback to parents. And I think Laura was talking specifically about parents. And I think it's very appropriate here. Staff will develop means of, regular communication outside of the traditional, conference model.
Right. Okay.
In addition to.
Got it. Yeah, because our first conference is really scheduled in November. You're right. So I was just looking at the calendar this morning. Okay. Unless you guys have additional things to add, I'm wondering if we want to kind of look through these top bullets that we have, since those were a copy and paste. I think that they could use a little bit of refinement. And I want to make sure that they're clear so that when somebody else is looking at this document, they understand what we were saying. So I kind of talked us through the first bullet. The second one is about implementing curriculum best practices for special populations.
I have a thought about the first bullet. A lot of the feedback I heard from our teachers was that families had a really hard time accessing some of these platforms, and I'm wondering if we want to connect here. I know at some point in some group we talked about some kind of like help desk. I know that's not really in our purview here, but I wonder if we want to just make some kind of connection that there will be support, that ACS will be providing support to families.
Yeah, so I can connect with the technology team on that. And I think professional learning might also be involved, but technology, I believe, has had some conversations about creating a very specific help desk for families, but let's put a note here about that. Okay, thank you for that note. Anything that you guys would like to add about the curriculum best practices? This is one that I was kind of thinking might be a good place for us to find, again, some supporting documents that so we say best practices, right? There's that big giant, it's a big bucket. So that might be where we have some documents that we can link over on the right-hand side that could then give a little bit more detail about, well, what are those best practices for our special populations and virtual and hybrid models? And I don't know if you guys have those at your fingertips, but we can link them in.
I can send, I can send some. I'm doing a webinar for English learners in
Great.
distance learning, so I have some best practices for English learners in distance learning that I can share.
Yeah, and I know that our team, the special ed team, has been working on creating this as well, so I can get that and send it to you.
That's
Yeah,
great.
I'll send you something too, Julia.
Yeah, and I'll list them however you guys send it to me. Maybe I'll either list the population or I'll list the specific articles, but I did stick a little placeholder in there. So yeah, if you send me something, I will put it into a shareable Google link and add it to that. All right, I'm gonna hop down to the interdisciplinary approach. Any feedback on that one, or we're okay? And we feel like it's in the right spot and that kind of stuff.
I think my question is in this, I know this has been talked about, but I'm not exactly sure the answer is how the planning and, well, I shouldn't say planning, how the pacing will differ for virtual and hybrid.
So I think
I'm
that
not
was
sure about
that was one of the things that I think we talked about a little bit on Monday is that, you know, ultimately, no matter how we start school in the buildings, you know, ultimately we'll eventually be into a hybrid model, but there could be some of our students who are still in a virtual model. So it's going to be really important that we find a way to ensure the alignment between the virtual and the hybrid instruction. So maybe as we're in a hybrid model and more students come back into the hybrid model from the virtual, they're coming into a place where they still have a continuum of learning.
I think what's needed on this bullet point is probably, I believe what we're talking about is pacing so that virtual and hybrid models are in parallel with each other.
Yeah, that is better language. Thank you. Does that help? Thank you. And that's going to be a lot of work for us to do, but I think it is important for our students to have that. So so the next one I'm reading the chat too, but the next one is about, we talked about ensuring opportunities and resources for community building. I'm gonna move this other bullet up to be underneath that because they kind of go together a little bit. And then if you guys, I think these are ones that we all typed. So providing a vehicle for supporting teacher collaboration, exchange of resources. We could bring back the learning resource exchange pretty easily. Then we've got professional learning communities. And Kaylin, I see your comment about this idea of if students would normally be pulled out for intervention or enrichment, how are we going to address that? So that is an important thing to consider, and hopefully the scheduling team is also considering that, but I think certainly that we can capture that in this document.
I would also add students that are pulled out for intervention, like special education programs and other.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Gerald yesterday, and he assured me that the scheduling group is addressing some of these special populations and the way they've been served and what they might need. he said, pretty soon we'll know. He told me actually I'd know today, but I don't think so.
Maybe today still has a few hours left, so I'm gonna put your question in there actually so that I don't lose it because I don't have the language for it yet, but I want to make sure we capture it, Kaylin.
I know Bethany is in that group and she'll bring up the dedicated English language development block, especially since so many of our students now have interrupted education due to no internet access and low participation. But I don't know, I put that in the hyperlink. I don't know if it probably goes here, academic language development.
Okay, so
Probably, that's fine, Julia. 'cause I
tell
know-
me, yeah, I was gonna say, tell me where to include in.
No, I think it's under that umbrella. I think it will
Sorry
be,
about that.
I know, in that question that you just added,
Mhm.
it'll be, I know she's in the scheduling. I know it'll be in there. I also hyperlinked it in my specialized population summary that I sent to you.
Okay.
You could put academic English language development block.
Oh.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Does that it'll come across?
Yeah. That's fine.
Okay. So with this, I'm going to move this up so that we can see kind of, I think that, you know, with the division guidance, there's probably going to be some action steps that need to be developed from this division guidance to ensure that the guidance happens. And so if you see a place where we need to add something for either school administration and staff, that would be very helpful.
I just have one final thought. We do have a small population of students working with the ASOLs, and it's a small group across the division, but I'm wondering if we need some kind of acknowledgement or step regarding that group.
Does that fall in at all to kind of this idea of small group, whether it's pull out, push in, would it go with kind of where we are, or does it need a separate bullet?
I was kind of reflecting on the priority standard bullet. That's kind of where my brain was at when I was thinking about it.
And so that would be a separate.
I haven't really fleshed out the thought. I'm just thinking, I'm wondering if we do need to acknowledge that there is a group of students working on an alternative curriculum, and how are we addressing that group?
Is that a pacing? Would you say ASL pacing? I don't like to put groups in there. We can change the language later too.
I mean, it's
instruction.
luckily that group is already is addressed on such an individualized basis already. So that's a good thing. Just
yeah,
I'm not sure how to incorporate it here.
Okay, so I made note of this question, and I think that we can certainly consider coming back and reflecting on some of these statements as well. As you guys are also reflecting on these, the only other part that we have here, and so if there's any other, I'm just going to move, we're not going back as a big group, just so that you guys know, so when we leave here, you're free for whatever is next on your calendar. The other things that we're including on the slide are any documents that we want to provide to our school leaders that we would find supportive in implementing this. So, I know I put a best practices placeholder in there, but if you have other articles or documents that you think belong in this box, we can add them. And then the only other one, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I haven't received it yet, but Fisher and Frey put out a distance learning playbook book, and it has an e-version as well, and they're doing some like free online webinars and book clubs and things like that around it. So I'm hoping that'll provide some support.
I'm
Sure.
doing that webinar tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'll share once we get all that information.
Yeah.
It's
So once
Me
you
too.
once
There's-
you see it, if you find that it would be of benefit, yeah, absolutely, we can add that in. And if if we leave at 11 and at 2 o'clock today, you're like, ooh, I forgot about this, just definitely send it to me and I can add it in. I typically come back in and reflect on the work and make sure that I accomplished what I was supposed to. This box below, and I clarified this, was like who's asking the questions. So this would be if we give this playbook to school leaders and they have questions about curriculum, who do we list? And so I just kind of brain dumped people in there. And so I put, Dr. Mann, of course, Dr. Mazingo typically lists myself, Kim, and Tanya for curriculum as point person people. I listed Bethany, although I don't know if there's a different, Bethany, and then Laura, Donna, Jane Richardson for pre-K, and there's probably more.
And Julia, I was wondering when you were talking about the best practices and the training that Kim was just talking about and so forth. When I have mentioned that kind of work to Dr. Mann in the past, he's always said, do we know if the approach that's being supported is in line with what our own tech services department is doing? So I just want to put that out there so that whatever they are doing, I don't really know what their plans are for training. And is it going to be just on our platforms, or is it going to be on blended learning as it was a few years ago? I mean, they do have a lot of philosophy and supports and so forth. So anyway, I'm just putting that out there so that everybody else knows that.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And once if you haven't attended the webinar yet, if you find that it doesn't really align to what we're putting out there, then we can remove it. And Donna, I've had a couple conversations with Emily Dillard too, and they are planning to do some sort of not a camp, right? She was calling it something else, but something in the fall that definitely not only is about like our applications and our learning management system and using those things, but also we're going to have to focus on those best practices and ACPS's definition of synchronous and asynchronous. All of those things will have to be part of that. So
Okay.
I don't think that they have a written plan yet. We
Yeah.
just have had an early conversation.
When I saw a news release this morning about Loudoun County's board meeting last night, they have already started a whole series of training for their teachers on their platform, Schoology. And it's very precise, actually, what they want to have done before school even starts. So I just didn't know where we are in that.
And as far as that goes, I did hear that Dr. Hutchings mentioned that we wouldn't be able to have our teachers attend mandatory training at this point since they're not under contract at this point.
Right,
So,
right.
but I do think that the training is planned to be quite targeted, and it's going to have to be ongoing as well, and we're going to have to be flexible in the way that we provide it. So whether it's live or webinar, recorded webinar style, we're going to have to think outside the box on this one too.
Yeah, of course.
For sure. So as we come down to our last 4 minutes, are there any other things that you guys have, like burning things that you would like noted? Maybe you don't have the exact language that you really want captured, but you know that you want a placeholder for at least a specific action or thought, and we can work to flesh out that language. Just want to make sure that we fully capture everybody's, it doesn't have to be a complete thought.
I don't know that it's something to add to curriculum, but I really liked what somebody said. I think it was, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on her name. But I think it was more about opportunities to reflect on how the curriculum is going and revise it too. Something about that flexibility, or, and recognizing that this is all new to everybody, and there's going to be bumps, and that we're going to need to be kind to ourselves and kind to how this process is going. And but again, that opportunity to reflect on how things are going in the curriculum and to come back and revise it as well.
So that almost makes me feel like you want to include some form of feedback loop that includes maybe like touching in with teachers and getting kind of a pulse check with teachers as well to see like, do you have what you need? What would be helpful that you don't have? So any other thoughts? And I'll reiterate that Christina told me, just because we type it doesn't mean that it is. So definitely get those thoughts in if they're in your head, because this ultimately will go to the leader group and they will use this guidance to determine the final guidance that will be included.
This is another probably not fully formed thought,
That's
but
okay.
I'm just gonna shoot it out and you can translate it as needed.
Sure.
One of the pieces of feedback we got from the citywide teachers specifically was that when the central office curriculum instruction group started sending out packets to families in the K2 world, teachers, our citywide teachers, didn't know in advance. And so families got learning material that just wasn't appropriate for their students because it wasn't reflecting grade level, not instructional level. And the teachers had to do a lot of backtracking and they were kind of caught out of the loop. And so I wonder if there's a way to kind of note the information sharing will be clear and concise around curriculum and that it will be done in advance or something around that so that teachers are prepared to address family needs and concerns. That wasn't a well-formed thought, but
That's okay. I'm gonna refine it when I have a moment today. I understand where you're coming from, though.
and not to say that those packets shouldn't have gone out. It was just more of the teachers weren't prepared to address the parent concerns and were just like quickly inundated and had to kind of backtrack a bit. So just being a little more, I don't know how to phrase that. But.
Yeah, I understand. It's almost this idea of being planned out far enough so that like you can include all of those stakeholders prior to decisions being made. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's 11 o'clock and I don't want to hold you late and we're not getting back together as a large group. I'm going to go ahead and end us for the day so that we're on time. And what I'll empower you to do is if you want to hop back in this document and if you have a thought later in the day, you're welcome to do that. Or if you would like to email me something and have it included in the document, then absolutely you can email me any of those things. And with that, I'll let you go. All right. Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Thanks, Julia.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Julia.
Good to see
Clap,
you all.
clap, clap.
Thank you.